Another Friday, another loadout video for you here to round into the weekend so that you can do as best as possible if you jump onto Warzone over the next coming days. Today, I want to focus on rifle play. I've been playing a ton of Fortune's Keep, and while there's a ton of engagements where it's SMG heavy or close quarters focused, there's just enough crossover, I think, from the rifle play that you can be seeing in Fortune's Keep and Rebirth Island, and that nice basis for even Caldera. We're not talking super long range play today, but instead stuff to go mid to semi-long range with that you can challenge and win most engagements given your accuracy. As we go along, drop your thoughts below. What's your favorite rifle to use in Warzone right now? Of course, there is no 100% right or wrong 1 to 10 list. There are going to be some things that can be interchangeable depending on the player. So if you're enjoying one specific rifle that's not on this list, feel free to let me know down below. But if you enjoy the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, do be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all things Warzone, Modern Warfare 2, and anything COD related. For now though, let's take a look at the top 10 plus rifles of Season 4 thus far. First and foremost, I think the one that there will be no debate for, especially this season, is the NZ41. Straightforward, nothing really to it. We've talked about this plenty of times. Beam machine, minimal recoil, substantial damage. Not necessarily the highest, but more than enough to get the job done, and with the amount of control you retain while using this, it's a no-brainer. So for this build, of course, I'd recommend the MX Silencer, Orb Weaver 360mm barrel, G16 2.5 times optic, the Orb Weaver E-Pack, the hand stop, the Sakura 50-round magazine, lengthened, hatched grip, frenzy, and fully loaded. Again, we've talked about this one plenty of times. You're probably sick of seeing it, but we'd be doing you a disservice if we didn't mention this as a top rifle in the top rifle video. So check it out if you haven't done so already. I imagine you have. But another one is the KGM40, one that recently I've honestly come to really love. I said it before recently, and I think I'll say it again, is that if we were to see a nerf to the NZ come in and absolutely just eviscerate it, this I think would be a quick replacement for it. The KGM40 may not deal as much damage, and the TTK is about 40 milliseconds slower than the NZ41, but that TTK also extends out further than the NZ by a few meters, so there's a trade-off that is nice. You'll notice a difference, but it's not too terribly different, and for that reason, I think it's a great alternative here. The recommended build that I'd give you for this is the MX Silencer, the Reisdorf 720mm shrouded barrel, the 2.5 times optic, the Krosnick 12V stock, the hand stop underbarrel, the 8mm Klauser 60-round drum mag, lengthened, the polymer grip, tight grip, and fully loaded. Now, I will say that if you want to end up maximizing your potential with this, I'd recommend something like Amped as your third perk, or if you end up feeling confident in your ability to control the recoil, there's minimal to begin with on this, but if you want to sacrifice the polymer grip for the taped grip, so you end up getting that weapon swap quickness as a positive, I would highly recommend it because this thing is kind of a tank whenever you try and swap weapons without Amped or without something that boosts that weapon swap speed in the attachments. It's just really slow. So do with that information what you will, but try out the KGM40, it is seriously phenomenal. Now, the AS44 is the next weapon I would recommend in our sort of top 10 here. Not in any particular order like we've mentioned. This one, honestly, I don't think that I'd rank it at number 3. It is in the top 10. It's been one I've been having some fun with, and to kind of avoid the crossover that we've talked about beforehand, I want to talk about some newer ones first and foremost. But the AS44, we've talked about this one before in this sort of wicked fire rate and TTK builds, but this one, there actually is a practical use to it and something that you can build it where it's relatively controllable, but still fast firing and has a decent TTK at its base. This practical build consisting of the MX Silencer, the Kovaleskaia 615mm barrel, the 2.5 times optic, the Kovaleskaia custom stock, the Carver foregrip for a little bit more recoil control, the Gorenko 50-round magazine, lengthened, the hatched grip again for a little bit more recoil control, some flinch resistance on that too, gung-ho or sleight of hand, I think that one's really personal preference. There's not a whole great number of perks for the AS44, and then perk 2 is fully loaded that I would recommend. After that, I'd go with the Vargo 52, although honestly, possibly the Vargo S soon for Vanguard. With Season 4 reloaded in Vanguard, we are getting the Vargo S, the version here for Vanguard, which with the ability to add 10 attachments as opposed to 5, and with how many rifles we've seen be this sort of center focus with the meta in the last few months, it might very well overtake the use for the Vargo 52 from Black Ops Cold War, but this thing, it continues to be a solid choice for rifle play and will be for a little bit of time, I'd imagine. After a few recent adjustments, it was nerfed, then buffed, so it was kind of only now slightly below where its true former glory was, but you can absolutely still fry with it. Now, Cold War weaponry is absolutely monotonous. You'll probably guess this build as with the others we'll talk about here later in the video, but the GRU suppressor, Task Force barrel, axial arms 3 times optic, Spetsnaz grip, and the 60-round magazine. Very straightforward, very simple, and something that, again, you'll see here later on in this video. But outside of that, I'd say the Cooper Carbine's a newer one that we can talk about, or returning one that we can talk about. I'd say it's viable again. It had a stranglehold on the meta for a while back in like season, what was that, 1 or 2, whenever it really became popular, but that was before the 300 HP increase. In Caldera then, when 300 HP was the standard, it kind of fell off a little bit, but now that we're across the board on all HP levels being uniform again at 300 HP with armor, it's not a bad option. High fire rate, minimal recoil, easy to use. So we're revisiting one of the builds we've talked about in the past. The MX Silencer, Cooper Custom 22-inch barrel, the 2.5 times optic or 3 to 6 times optic, I'd say on this one, the Cooper 45 RS stock, the M1941 hand stop underbarrel, the 9mm 60 round magazine, lengthened, polymer grip, hard scope, and fully loaded. Outside of that, we're going to talk about the bar. And I saw a comment last loadout video that got me pretty good. It said, nobody, with like sort of crickets and no response there with that. And then Espresso, I swear the bar is meta. And damn it, it's meta to me, even if nobody else likes it. But on a serious note, it might not be as front and center as it was, but it's absolutely, at the very least, still an incredibly viable option for your rifle setups. And hilariously, it keeps evading nerfs from Raven in the areas that it actually excels in. The most recent adjustments, if my memory serves me correctly, were to like the BMG rounds, which, yeah, would make sense because they increase the damage on each of your shots, but that's not what people use. Realistically, it's not the best choice for your weapons. You don't want to use those given the alternatives. For this build, I'd recommend the MX Silencer, the 30-inch XL barrel, the 2.5 times optic, Chariot WR stock, M1941 hand stop, 8mm Clouser 40 round magazine, lengthened, polymer grip, hard scope, and fully loaded. Again, one we've talked about plenty of times, so we're breezing past that. Next, the STG I'd still say is in the top 10 for rifle play here at this. It's kind of fallen from, again, its former glory, that peak of when it was the best weapon by far, but it's still very, very easy to use, very easy to control, and can still do pretty well for you. It just might not have the fastest TTK or as minimal recoil as like the NZ41, but it's still an absolutely phenomenal choice. For this, I'd recommend the Mercury Silencer, the 760mm barrel, the 2.5 times optic, the VDD 34S weighted stock, the M1941 hand stop, the 8mm Kurz 60 round magazine. You can use the 50, that actually has a little bit less recoil, but I found the 60 is pretty easy to manage in terms of its recoil, but still has a little bit more damage potential as opposed to the 50. Then for ammo, I'd run lengthened, polymer grip, focus, and fully loaded. The final 3 weapons we'll talk about here today are pretty, again, self-explanatory. They all follow a very similar pattern, that being the QBZ, XM4, and AK-47. Honestly, these 3 kind of in that order too. The QBZ having a little bit better of a TTK than the XM4 and AK-47. It's like the XM4 in which the recoil is very easy to manage. The AK-47 has a little bit more bounce while having a little bit more damage, but the QBZ just has a little bit more edge on that. For this, I'd recommend for all 3 of those though, the Agency Suppressor, Task Force Barrel, Axial Arms 3 times optic, Field Agent Grip, and the 60 round mag, or whatever the equivalent is for the weapon itself. The AK-47 is like the Spetsnaz grip and stuff like that. So kind of sad that we have 3 weapons we can knock out all in one fell swoop like that by mentioning just the same 5 attachments, but that's how Black Ops Cold War was, man. Very monotonous, very straightforward, and very uniform in that regard. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that there aren't other weapons that are absolutely viable, phenomenal options as well. I mean, the Nikita AVT, the C58, the EM2, those are some really good ones right off the top of my head as is. Of course, you can still do well with things like the Grau or the M4A1 for Modern Warfare. I've been seeing a lot of people use the Kilo recently. I'm still not really sold on it, but I mean, it's viable. I just don't think it's a top-tier competitive rifle by comparison, just because these other ones we've mentioned, I think absolutely will just outgun the Kilo anyway. Same thing with the M13. We've talked about that before. The M13 was a mid weapon in Modern Warfare 2019's year of support, when there were only like a dozen weapons that would really be ahead of it to begin with. It was only really ever good with the headshot multiplier, so if you're hitting anything that is like limb or stomach or even chest shots, you're getting to hit marker city. If you want something that's fast firing and easy to control like that, the Ram 7 would be something that I'd take over the M13. But anyways, that's my pick here for the top 10 rifles within Warzone right now, so I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Do you like some of these weapons? Have you been using them? If so, how have you been doing with them? Or is there something you'd like to add to this list that we didn't quite talk about? Whatever the case, feel free to drop your thoughts below, but if you guys enjoyed the video, if you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on the video, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing running all things Warzone and anything COD related. Love to have you in the community, but thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.